It's Friday. It's not just Happy Friday, it's also World Smile Day. First day of October 2021. Wherever you are, smile. It's the day for smiling. We are live on SpiceFM. We are live on KTN Home. We're also live streaming the show, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This is the first and only radio station that has a full-on 4 hours of talk in the morning, and also having the same conversation, audio and visual experience. CT Muga has the day's proverb.
One does not use a spear to kill a snail.
One does not use a spear to kill a snail. This is general African proverb or specific?
It's really very general, and it's also really very African.
General African proverb. Okay. Next week, in 4 days' time.
From Monday.
You see now, it's already changed.
From which? From the last Monday or from next?
No. Monday. Friday today, Saturday, Sunday.
Beginning Monday, we'll be having
Tuesday.
a Bagusi proverb.
Yes, you'll have.
Latest Wednesday.
No. Monday, Tuesday. If I may use a Kenyan phrase, you can take that to whichever bank you choose.
It's nothing in the
Remember
bank.
those campaign promises? We had promised 5 stadium, but now we're going to do 7.
In
just to,
6
you know.
In 6
time.
months.
Yeah, we're not going to do 7 to make it.
And as for the
better.
express highway,
Yeah.
it'll be finished in December. No, did I say December? No. Next year,
Oh, speaking of the highway,
April.
yesterday was the 30th of September. Some sections of the road expressway was supposed to be opened. One, JKIA Mlolongo. Second, Westlands ABC Place.
Tell me which one is open. Tell me which one. Now, so let me just repeat what I've told you in the past, okay? You know why they're laughing? They all seem to think that this express will be completed in April next year. Some say June. I told them, yes, it may be April, but 2023.
But the CS said so it must be true.
Oh, no, the CS can say all he likes. It's perfectly all right. He's the CS. He can say those things, okay? But this expressway, unless it's another expressway, this one, 2023.
All right. So when CT went off mic there and started talking one-on-one, he was talking one-on-one with our guest this morning, who is Isaac Ndereva. He's the Executive Director of the Electricity Consumer Society of Kenya and an electricity billing analyst. Isaac, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Eric.
It's good to have you in the studio again to discuss the issues of electricity and all. First, explain to us 2 things. One, who is the Electricity Consumer Society of Kenya?
Electricity Consumer Society of Kenya is a civil society organization that champions the consumers' rights, especially now that we have the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDG number 7 talks about affordable energy, and we had gone the wrong route initially because energy was becoming more expensive. Yeah, so basically we are the center of implementing that SDG. Yeah.
So is it registered?
It is registered.
Who are the members?
We tried to register a few members with some subscription fee, but for a start, we may not be able to run the organization with such funds because they are not much. We have also just started to campaign mostly from last year and this year. And again, it's the time people are trying to learn that actually energy had become expensive. I think also initially people are not so much connected to electricity, so the people who you would have expected to complain were not many. But now 75% to 80% connectivity, people are alive with the information that electricity is at the center of their problems.
So, Isaac, who are the members of this society?
They are manufacturers. Some of the manufacturers have registered, although we have another parallel association of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, which deals with large users. We are also trying to absorb them, and we are also trying to work close with Kenya Association of Manufacturers. So those are the members. We are also trying to get a few of the individual members who are having problems. We try to, that one we are doing almost for free, because if you start charging them and they are complaining about 10,000 shillings, you may not be able to get much from it. So we are also dependent on some donors so that we can be able to advocate without a lot of hassle.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then who's an electricity billing analyst?
that is someone who looks at bills, the details of the bills in different countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, and then you compare with the Kenyan bill, and you see where we are suffering, and perhaps even be able to advise the government. We've not gotten an opportunity to do that. But I think the way forward is that the government must keep on asking such people to advise. Yeah.
So what exactly are you doing? I mean, now understanding this society and those companies that make up these associations, what exactly are you doing for them, for those that you bill? What exactly do they get at the end of the day?
First thing is that we are able to analyze their bills, and sometimes Kenya Power will have made some mistakes. We try to advocate and follow up so that they can get refund. We had also a case where in 2020, all companies, I think, that were supposed to be enjoying the time of use tariff, Kenya Power did not lower the average as it was supposed to be done. They were supposed to have that gazetted, but it wasn't done. So I think it would be considered as illegal that they effected that without gazettement. So we really tried to talk to them, but we also realized that they are hurting in terms of finances, and we decided to just leave it at that. So at individual levels, we are able to champion for one or two companies who have some specific problems tied to them. But that was a national problem at that time.
So if I understand you to be right, the growth of your membership is something that is aspirational. You are hoping that with time, as you grow in stature, that people who fall in the category of consumers of electricity will see the need to join the association.
Exactly. And then we may only reach there if we are first able to run without them subscribing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Isaac, we saw just the other day the president, out of a public outcry, established a task force to review the power purchase agreements between Kenya Power and the various suppliers of electricity to the grid. And the task force presented a report, and among the recommendations, I mean, there are several recommendations, but the action and what is going to be a deliverable is a substantial reduction in power bills by December. Did you present any findings to this report? Did you to the task force?
Yes, we were consulted by the task force. We tried to explain to them what really matters. And we told them, of course, that the fuel cost was one of the major components that was making the bill very high. But of course, now I think the president decided to drop, not even if you scrap off the fuel cost totally, that would have been around 20%. But now he just came to 33%. That means even other components have to be attacked. Much as he gave the recommendation that they review the PPA, the PPAs, I think that he may not be able to bring it too much down to achieve the 33%. The fuel cost ranges around about, if I look at my record here, the fuel cost is taking about 18.72%. So even if the team drops too much, it can only come to around 15%. So really, the next 15 or 18% has to be gotten from other issues. And one of them, I think, as a government, would have been VAT, which takes about 13.94%. But basically, I know also Kenya Power is going to hurt. Because I know recently, why I even thought that it's going to be a problem is that they were trying to bargain for a 20% increase. And then you realize that they have been slashed from 20% plus to minus 33. So it's like they have been deducted 53%. It's going to be a big problem even to be an MD of Kenya Power right now, and you are given the mandate to be profitable. It's going to be
since this is something that you understand well, please help me understand it also. How is it that a company that has a near monopoly, when I say near, it's because I know there's some people who use kerosene, there's some who use maybe solar only, but predominantly, they have a service that is subscribed to by most Kenyans. Tell me how it is they are unable to make the money that they anticipate, even without the increases. What hinders it from making money?
Well, we've sat down with several of them, and we also were asking the same question. And we were able to understand that, number one, the drive by the government for the last mile connectivity is what hurt the most. It would have been profitable. Because most of the people who are connected and they are a bit far from the generating stations, those losses are too much. As a result, even maintenance is required. We have not seen a considerable increase in the staff in Kenya Power. So that has resulted into it didn't go into increasing profitability. In fact, the biggest portion of the consumers are the people who are called domestic lifeline, people who consume less than 100 kilowatt hours. Those people, even if they are above, I think they are around 6.3 million right now. So you don't expect to get any profit. In fact, if you look at the net income from them, it's actually a loss. And those are the majority of the people you have. But unfortunately, again, as a government, those are the people you need to look for because they are the voters, actually. Yeah. But
so are you saying that it's costing more for the Kenya Power to supply electricity to this consumer than the consumer is paying?
Exactly. Right now, if you do it technically, you realize that Kenya Power is actually losing in trying to supply electricity to them. Yeah.
I don't understand it.
You don't?
No, I know.
Explain it again, maybe, Isaac. You said, number one,
Yeah.
One of the things that you've mentioned, this consumer is far from the generator.
Yes.
This consumer, it'll take, there'll be heavy losses on the line
Yes.
to take power to this consumer's home.
Yes.
So how much, explain now from that point, what are these costs that Kenya Power has to incur to get power into the heart of some homestead somewhere, far-flung area?
They will buy power from Kenyan and other IPPs. The power they are going to buy, or the energy they are going to buy in kilowatt hours, they're going to pay that.
Right.
During transmission, the consumer does not get the actual amount that has been purchased. There are so many losses, yet Kenya Power has to still pay for that power from Kenyan. So as a result, they are the ones to cover for the losses. Now, the losses are coming as a result of trying to take that power to that consumer who is only paying about 500 or 200 Kenya shillings.
Should that not have been taken into consideration when this was being set up, for example? If we're looking at the expansion that was taking place, and you said that this is what is required for power to reach from point A to point B, all of those taken into consideration, and that is what we assume would be put in your bill, right? This is what it's going to cost. Should that not have been taken into consideration so that now, after the facts, losses are not being realized? Or are we saying that it was never considered?
It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was considered because you also realize that the government had set some ambitious kind of a goal that they want to, by year 2020, to have generated around 5,000 megawatt. But you see the demand for Kenya even now has not even hit 2,000. So as a result, they recruited too many, producers who now kept on being paid the capacity charge. And those are among the things that the president said that they are supposed to be retired. But I don't also see a lot of effect on the bill if they are the only ones to be retired. But it's good that he first decided to set the bar, not just a reduction by that 3%, but to 16 shillings. And please note that is only for the domestic ordinary who are paying 24.98 around September. There are others who are paying 17.96. That was the lifeline, and those are the majority. They are now supposed to be paying 12.03 or around 12 shillings. And that is inclusive of the WARMA and ERC, REP, that is rural electrification. And I think rural electrification is one of the components that should be scrapped off, because I think much as we get money from there, I don't see more of rural electrification at the moment. And in case there is, it is being funded by maybe World Bank or others. So that is also another component which takes about 3% of the bill. That should be
do we
scrapped off.
have the rural electrification program in the country currently being funded by external partners?
It has been funded by World Bank. I don't know. I don't know exactly at this point whether they already have some more funds. But that is one program. You realize that on the Sustainable Development Goals, it is a global or the UN agenda to ensure that we have electricity access, and we have to keep on reporting what is the percentage of the access that we have in the country. So as a result, they are also trying to fund for that. But they also want the government to have its own initiative to ensure that it is able to fund it. So, but much as we say that, of course, the rural electrification program money has been there for a long time. But I think the accountability is what is required to be followed up. But as you see, even in other countries, like South Africa and other countries, like South Africa is actually at 16 shillings. And I think that is why even the president decided to bring it to that point. But you realize that much of the South Africans' bills is subsidized by the government and many other countries, even Ethiopia, who are paying less than a shilling per kilowatt hour, is being subsidized by the government. So unless the government have to subsidize what it has caused the reduction in, Kenya Power will not survive. It has to actually subsidize for Kenya Power to also be up and running.
You know, the amount of money that the Kenya government put aside for what you call the last mile project was what? 6.7 billion Kenyan shillings?
Yeah, around there.
Okay, now 6.7 billion shillings was supposed to see everything to a completion, isn't it? Now, whatever we call it, what I don't seem to get is, okay, you take electricity to people, I'm putting it as basic as I can. Are we saying these people who then got electricity don't pay, and yet there was a cost to bringing the electricity to them? Are we saying that we didn't factor the cost of bringing the electricity to them and what they were going to pay against what they were going to pay? It was estimated that if the electricity was taken to a certain place, there'd be a certain number of takers. I've heard you say those numbers are not as high as we had anticipated. But if you are taking the poles, the posts, the wires to a place, surely you must know that
At the end of
there are
this
people.
line, there are people who are going to consume the power.
You know,
right?
having the meter in the house does not necessarily mean that you're taking power.
Yes.
Because the issue is consumption. Kenya Power builds on consumption.
Yes.
So if I'm to understand you, where you're heading with the question is, money has been put for the capital
Yes.
project of,
Yes.
buy the transformers, buy everything.
Yes.
And then the power has been brought to, let's assume that Tamu in Muhoroni did not have power. Let's just use this as an example.
It's a very good example.
So Tamu in Muhoroni now gets power, and there are homesteads in Tamu. So this particular one homestead gets a connection into the home, into the house. Kenya Power will need to bill you when you use the power.
Actually,
Is Kenya Power, is that line live? The line is live. Is it costing Kenya Power to get that line live? Yes. Now, did you switch on power this month? You didn't.
Yet there are losses.
no, there's a reason why I'm saying this. They don't just bring the power to you and say, okay, here's the power. You pay. There's a cost to having
To
that
getting
power
it
to
you,
your
you
home.
pay for it.
Heavily subsidized.
Yes, now.
And with this project, much more.
Oh, I agree. It is subsidized. You know, I was saying I agree because I know what the cost of bringing power was before the government stepped in.
Yeah.
It was a colossal amount, and that's why most people didn't bother with it. But I am saying, even if it was subsidized,
Yeah.
subsidy simply means somebody else is paying for you
Yes.
what you should actually have paid. Now, I'm saying, with all the calculations, all right,
Yeah.
and with all the power that we produce, and with all the huge consumers of our power would be extremely expensive if, let us say, for instance, there's a shortage of supply. So, again, it would be costly. But we don't have that situation in Kenya. So, when we keep explaining about the historical aspects of this cost, surely, even if people were planning for it, at some point, these historical factors needed to have balance.
But you see, that's the point, CT. It is not historical.
It is current.
It's every day.
Yes.
Every day, there is power on the line to this homestead. Every day. Now, this homestead has only switched on lights in the evening for 1 hour. How much are they going to pay at the end of the month for the bill?
Minimal.
That's what
Yeah.
Ndereva is saying,
No.
200 bob.
No.
So that 200 shillings,
Doesn't
is that
cover
200
the
shillings,
cost.
does it cover the cost of making sure that that line is
Actually,
live throughout
I am-
24
I am-
hours?
Even
I'm
maintenance.
glad you've mentioned it because it doesn't cost 200 bob. There's a time it costs 200 bob. It's a figure. It's just a figure for purpose of discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
Every time I look at my power bill, there are all these many costs. Okay.
Yeah.
What it amounts to, the cost just keeps going up.
You are here. We are talking practically.
Oh, I am
Practically, these 6.3 million domestic lifeline consumers.
6.7 billion.
Yes, 6.3
Million
million
people.
domestic consumers.
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
how much do they pay on average per month?
On average, let's even start by saying, assume that the cost of power is 20 shillings per kilowatt hour. Assume they have used around 50. That's going to be around 1,000. And I will tell you that most of them do not even, especially in those
the very
tertiary
rural areas.
sides.
Who's going to spend 1,000?
The
for
interior
electricity?
sides, 1,000 is going to, they normally even pay 100 shillings. You put a token for around 200 and it goes for about 2 months. Now, imagine there's a transformer there. There is some team dedicated to be maintaining that line.
Yeah.
And yet, I mean, paying back that particular project is what is an issue.
Yes, but the reason why I mentioned the word subsidy
Yeah.
is this. There are people who consume large amounts on our behalf. Let me explain what I mean. When you have industries and you have many of them,
Yes.
they pay quite a bundle for it.
Yes, at a reduced cost also.
Why are we reducing it for them?
Let me first even just mention for record purpose that we have 9 tariffs. And the tariff that the president was talking about was domestic ordinary. And that was paying 24.98. And that is what he said, drop from 24 to 16. And we did that.
Who's in that tariff?
The people in that tariff are people who are consuming over 100 kilowatt hours. And those are the majority of Kenyans. Anybody who has a fridge is in that category. Anybody who has an instant water heater, it is in that category. The people who are in this other category are people who just want a bulb and a socket. And mostly those are not even permanent houses. Most of them. You saw one that around Kiambu, the president was trying to commission a mud house. Yeah. So such a person will not even get to pay even 500 shillings in a month. But now I said that much of we are talking about that particular one, that domestic ordinary are supposed to be paying 16 shillings from 24. And they were the most expensively charged. Now, there's the lifeline. Now let's consider, now since they were at 17.96, they will come to 12. And we need to mark that now the price that the president said.
The maximum
will be 12. But I will explain what becomes a challenge. Now, the small commercial are the people who are on three-phase connection, like those people who have motors.
I hear this term three-phase. What does it mean?
Three-phase, I didn't expect that it was a difficult issue to understand, but I appreciate because there are many people who might keep on asking that.
Yeah.
That you might have never seen three-phase if you have never worked in an industry. So whatever you normally find in domestic is normally single-phase. Now, a transmission has 3 lines. It has red, yellow, and blue. Yeah. So single-phase is when you've been powered by one of those lines and then connected with the neutral. So each house, sometimes you might find that kuna nyumba zimepotea stima, line moja, ingine ijapotea. So those are connected on one line, maybe red. There are other yellow and blue. So, but when you have a load like a motor that uses all the 3 lines, hiyo ndio tunaita three-phase. And there are people who might be using that three-phase, but then they are still consuming less than 100 kilowatt hours. Those are the people we are calling small commercial 1. And then those are the people who will be paying from 17 shillings. They will be paying 12.03. They are the same band. They are in the same band with the domestic lifeline. And then I said the highly taxed people are supposed to be domestic ordinary who are paying 24. And then they will be paying 16.74.
Domestic ordinary, who's that?
Domestic ordinary are people who are spending over 100 kilowatt hours. Now, we need to be very specific, and that's why I said Kenyans need to be on the table to decide this, because the last time we had a reduction was in 2018 in August, and we were shortchanged because the domestic ordinary people, the price was, when we had that there is a reduction, the price came from 21.93. It was reduced to 22.19. Now, that's an increase. It's not a reduction.
Who are domestic ordinary? You've explained the previous one is maybe people with small machines, it's small SMEs that have machine. Let's say we are now seeing a proliferation of laundromats.
Yeah.
Those ones are using three-phase. So someone like that is on that other tariff.
Yeah, it's on domestic. They are on commercial, small commercial.
Small commercial.
And then there is commercial, industrial 1, 2, 3, up to 5.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
domestic ordinary.
We stick to the domestic ordinary and domestic lifeline. Those are people who use Those are basically domestic households.
People who are using
even
it for
in this
household.
station. Yeah, household. Even in this station right now. In where you plug in a computer, TV, that is a single phase, qua socket.
Okay.
But when you have 3-phase, it's not. It's a direct connection, and they use starters and the like.
Okay.
But those switches, those are there, and that is where the conversation should lie around, because the industries have not yet. We are actually trying to say that the president was concerned with the people who are on the domestic ordinary, and those people are on the single phase, and they are paying over 100 kilowatt
So,
hours.
according to you, then, Isaac, who should the attention be given now? Because it's as though that's where you seem to be going.
Yes.
That the attention is being given to a certain sector, and it shouldn't be. It should be given somewhere else. Is that what you're saying? Attention in terms of reduction, and if so, why?
Not actually. I'm saying that the people who drive this economy are the people who are the domestic ordinary. People who are using over 100 kilowatt hours.
Households.
Yes,
Okay.
and are on single phase. And that is me and you. Any person who pays more than 1,000, those are majority are there. And actually the biggest contributors of the Kenya Power's monthly bill are those people. And again, unfortunately, they are the people who are mostly taxed. And you see, of course, the government likes taxing where it has numbers. And so those are the people who have actually always suffered. In 2018, when they were told that power was reduced, is actually the consumption, the energy charge, what we call the energy charge, what is normally taken by Kenya Power, was increased from 12 shillings to 15.8. And then they reduced other components like forex, inflation, they reduced. I don't know how they managed to do that, and they say it is normally driven by international market. But now those are the same things that have started edging out, and power prices have increased. But now the challenge is that I don't know how we are going to be at the same 16 shillings, even when other like forex and inflation increases. I just hope that the president took care of that. Because one of the challenges, and I said, as Kenyans, we must be on the table to decide that the problems and the concerns we had as a society is number one, the directive did not mention about the demand and power factor reduction. Those are for the commercial tariffs. It was very silent on that. So Kenya Power may decide not to touch anything. People pay about 800 Kenya shillings for CI1 per kV. I know that might be complicated, but for some viewers who have interest in industrial, might understand that that was not reduced. And then number two, the price was set at 16 shillings. But the variations to the components, that is forex, electricity, fuel costs and all that, there was no capping to be told that it cannot go beyond this. So even when the next government comes in, it will realize that the only place we can be able to increase our cost here is going to be inflation, forex, fuel costs and all that. So I wish it was said that fuel costs cannot go beyond this, forex will never go beyond this. And then...
But how can they do that? I mean, forex you can't control.
Yes. But it can be subsidized by the government. Anything that goes above.
Okay.
You can say if it goes above this, the government.
Because if he says
Fixes
16
up,
and then they say it has grown to 25 because they cannot control. Because it's the same thing. When they said power cost had reduced in 2018, they actually increased the per unit in terms of what goes to Kenya Power, and then they reduced the forex and inflation.
Up.
Yeah. So how did they manage to do that? It's the same thing they should be doing even now.
So I almost hear you saying as though this drop that we are told is going to happen over the next 3 or so months.
Yeah.
From your from the indicators that you're pointing out here,
Yes.
that you're almost saying it's unrealistic.
I want to believe that it is going to be unrealistic. Because that is one thing I'm saying. Like now, for example, and that was point number 3, that Kenya Power was lobbying for 20% increase to manage its operations. Now, the 33% reduction means a 53% blow on its expectations. Now, would you want to become an MD of Kenya Power at such a time?
Well, they wanted a 20% increase.
Yes.
Increase in what?
In their cost, per unit.
In how much they charge us
Yes.
per unit.
Per unit, if it was 24.
Over and
Alright.
above what is the current state.
Yes.
Okay.
But
So
were,
that
they
was the
looking, were they
expectation.
looking at how much they're buying? Were they looking to reduce how much they're buying from their suppliers, Kengen and the IPPs?
No, it was supposed to remain the same. Yeah. But now, because they are having they are having difficulties in operation.
But in this particular case,
Yes.
from the task force recommendation,
Yes.
it's review how much you're buying, the power purchase agreements,
Yes.
and see whether you can derive a reduction.
Now, reviewing means, remember these power purchase agreements were also designed based on some funding, and they were given a 20-year contract. Now, if you have invested your 3 billion, you had, of course, estimated or calculated your income. Now, if someone comes in between your contract and says we have to reduce, how are you going to pay back the project? And some of them was funded by people who don't want to understand that. So it's going to be difficult, number one. And that's
So
why
it's
we
going
say
to be difficult to renegotiate the
to
contracts.
renegotiate. Some of them will say we cannot do that because it's not going to pay back. But then there were only 7 points we were saying. Even the 4 months were too short to negotiate those contracts. It's not going to be very easy. And of course, I know even Kenyans is normally paid capacity charge. But even trying to renegotiate such might mean that you will need time or you give them time to switch on a certain station if you don't want them to be there waiting for you. Now, and then we also realized that Energy Act in 2019 March did not also explain how a competitor to Kenya Power can be able to handle transmission. That normally happens in some grown economies where you can be, any other player can come in and then he will be leased the lines. Right now it is owned by Kenya Power and they are the ones to maintain. So that is where we are going to have the biggest challenge in even trying to have Kenya Power manage its own operations with that reduced, if they have been cut off like that, it's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah.
You know, you've explained it. I've actually understood what you've explained.
Yes.
But I still don't understand how it is, very simply, because it boils down to why I have to keep paying what I'm paying for electricity. Why is it? How can the government make this suggestion it's a suggestion by the president, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not an edict.
Yes.
Okay. How can that be realized so that electricity
Yes.
actually goes down in cost? Why am I arguing this way? One of the biggest hindrances to foreign investment in this country, it has been argued, is our cost of power. Now, this argument can go back and forth as much as we like, but at what point did you determine and say, you talked about subsidy?
Yes.
What do we do to invite more players into that sector where they pay a lot of money for a lot of electricity, as opposed to these consumers whom we know switch on?
Those that need to be supported.
Yes,
I'll tell you.
yes.
Like, for example, in South Africa, and we said South Africa is also paying 16 shillings at the moment. But if you look at the bill for South Africa, 55% of the bill goes to generation, those people maybe who have sold to them. 10% goes to transmission, 17% goes to distribution, and then taxes and others come to around 17.2. Now, if you come to Kenya, consumption is 59.28. So taxation is 40.72. Now, instead of the government subsidizing, it is taxing.
So
that is
taxation in
what-
Kenya is 40%,
Yeah.
40.7% of the bill.
Yes.
And if you compare with to South Africa,
South
it's
Africa is 17.2. Now, you can imagine Ethiopia, or much as they say that they are using a lot of hydro, which is 89% of the generation mix. How are they charging 0.84 shillings per kilowatt hour?
In Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia.
So what are the
Tell me,
what
how
are the
How are
components?
they doing it? And I
So
think-
that it is the government subsidizing. So the government knows that for me to be a darling to my citizens, the first thing I need to do is to give them power. It is almost close to health. Just the same way you find it is difficult for Kenyan government to give people, universal health care. You have to pay now. It is the same thing they are not able to do. So I don't know. I don't know how they are supposed to subsidize, but I am sure they can manage to
All
do
right.
that.
What are those components? If you've given us the breakdown, South
Yes.
Africa 50% goes to generation.
Yes,
Is what goes to. What are the components in Ethiopia?
In Ethiopia, is basically the government doesn't have a lot of issues. It pays that as bulk. So for you as a consumer, you're just told this is energy charge, without much breakdown. As opposed to Kenya, where you have fuel cost of 18%, forex of 3%, inflation of 1.84, rural electrification of 3%, and VAT.
So in Ethiopia, you don't know how much of that bill is going to tax.
I have not. It's most of these things we normally
Could
try
be
to
90% going to tax, although it's still cheaper because
you see
everything else was
the
free.
cost of generation, from hydro cannot be less than 1 shilling. So definitely the government, and then you are generating, then you are selling, and you want to make a profit. So it's basically the government. Although I might also say that if you look at Ethiopia, the hydro is 89%, and then the electricity access is 45%. So their cost is 0.84. If you come to South Africa, their cost is 16.3, but their electricity access is 95%.
And the breakdown, do they have hydro? Do they
What is
have
Yes, yes.
nuclear?
Now, for example, it is interesting. That question is very, very interesting. Now, for Kenya, we have hydro at 29%. But let me mention hydro and thermal, leaving the rest. So that because they keep on riding on the fact that they are using thermal generation. Kenya, thermal generation is 27%.
27.
27%. And hydro is 29%. In South Africa, hydro is 6%. Thermal is 85%. You get 85%. Now, and then there are others like wind and all that. Now, South Africa, if Kenya would get 85% thermal, I'm telling you the cost of electricity would be around 60 shillings.
Let me ask you, this 85% thermal in South Africa,
Yes.
is it by private sector or government?
No, it's by private sectors and some by government. But there is a mix. There is a mix, but of importance is to know that all those people who need money for generating power will get some money from the government. And of course, the government is able to pay itself back because when you have too many investors and you are taxing them, instead of taxing electricity, you tax the other components of what they are getting. Yeah.
As you've mentioned South Africa and talked about private players being in this circle,
Yeah.
many have talked about having private players also entering the Kenya power circles.
Yes.
What would you see from all the indications you have, from all the calculations that you've been able to see and the determinant factors of cost?
Yes.
What would it mean for private players to then play at this level in Kenya?
One of the challenges we have had is that the independent power producers or the private, you're saying the private in generation or transmission?
Across.
Okay. First of all, in transmission or distribution or sale to the clients, to the consumers, is going to be very difficult because we don't have that infrastructure waiting for a new investor. And then, of course, trying to get the way leave as a private. In fact, I had another client who had a problem in trying to, they are being told that if you want to generate power and you want to sell to us as Kenya Power, you first have to get your power from here and take it to the generation point, which was around 13 kilometers. Now, the challenge is how they will be able to get the way.
So we don't have legislation for this.
Yeah. And by the way, if you look at even the constitution, that way leave by Kenya Power is not Kenya Power's property.
Whose property is it?
It is supposed to be government property. And it should be used by anybody who is in agreement with the government.
So how does Kenya Power then get to control it? Because they seem to control
Well, because you see, the government is 50.1% or something around there. So there is no Kenya Power and government. So even when you hear bailout, it's government bailing itself out. If you hear taxing of the consumers, it's the government trying to get more.
So isn't it the same thing now when the
Yeah.
government says that the prices are going to go down? Isn't it just the government saying that we're trying to get Kenyans out of a difficult spot, and so we're going to reduce the cost? If you're saying that it's government bailing itself out,
Yeah.
it's government who's essentially dictating what the prices are going to be.
Yeah.
So here where we see the prices coming down, essentially, with the doubt that you have, essentially it's government saying, all right, let's fix this thing so that the cost is cheaper.
But there is
for
an
Kenyans to
outcry
access
from the
power.
Kenya Power itself. You see, as much as I'm saying government is Kenya Power, Kenya Power themselves are complaining when the government says that. That is what is the problem. And in fact, having talked to several of them, they are saying it's not likely to be possible to realize that. Yeah. And now, the government should have set a ceiling on the individual taxation components, and then it subsidizes the components. And then it has to keep on bailing out Kenya Power itself.
You know, but Ndereva,
Yes.
there's something you mentioned, and that's why I asked for that comparative analysis. Huh?
Yes.
South Africa has private players.
Yes.
The government has arrived at an understanding with these private players.
Yes.
They tax them. But the South African citizen enjoys the benefits of this association
Yes.
by paying power that is considered reasonable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We have a distribution system that is predominantly 51% owned by the government.
Yes.
Then we have all these players who connect to this particular producing and so forth.
Yes.
Would I be wrong if I said then the problem is here? Where power is produced and how the distribution is spread out, how it's distributed, meaning the actual production of it. Then the contracting of it, which is now what determines, in my mind, as a layman, what it eventually costs us. Why do I say this? We do not know who these. Do you know who these private contractors are? I mean, we know the name. They're called this and this and this. But do we know who owns them?
We don't know who owns it. In fact, the president also said that part of what we should do is to be able to get the owners of those people.
Why am I saying this again?
Yeah.
It is because anything that has a government footprint in it in this country,
Yeah.
the thing that one is guaranteed to find if one delves too deeply is that some of the vested interests, the company may be a foreign company, but very many of the people who have a say in it are actually locals. So the entire thing is skewed to ensure that they profit. Because if you ask me, if you break down the element of profit that all these power producing companies have, most of the discussion we have, it goes back to contracting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I say, okay, so break it down. This contracting that you're talking about, break it down for us so that we understand why it is that what we're paying has to be this amount, and how much of it really represents the actual cost of producing this power, and how much of it actually represents what it is that should be a reasonable cost for these people to recover, and why it is it has to be 20 years. All these questions. I ask this because the 6.7 billion that we were talking about initially, it came from the European Investment Bank. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, banks are reasonable, straightforward. But investors and what they do, my reference is to Kenya specifically. Somewhere along the line, this cost that we keep speaking of may turn out to be, they have nothing to do with the actual cost of producing electricity, and has nothing to do with any of these things that we're saying. So you throw in the government component of taxes. All it does, it adds up to people being paid for doing something that we are finding useful, but which doesn't quite cost what they're telling us it costs. My thinking.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.